Good morning, everybody. This is Kempo Gurudas Srinyatananda, or as some of you know me in the business world, Dr. John Michael Salvato. Today is World AIDS Day, and this is our special program honoring our survivors, those that we've lost, and the heroes of the HIV and AIDS care movement. My special guest, Swami Anjani Jaya Hanuman, will be joining us very shortly. So stay tuned, and we'll be talking with her, sharing some incredible stories about probably one of the greatest heroes that our movement has ever seen, and welcoming you guys to plug in, follow us if you haven't already done so on Twitter, and as well as you can reach us at zenkondo.com, that's ZENKONDO.com. And be sure to follow us there. Check out some of the posts that we've shared. You'll find a lot more information about World AIDS Day at UNAIDS or at worldaidsday.org. And so I'm going to give our special guest just a few minutes to get plugged in here. This is the first time that she'll actually be using her webcam, so we're really excited about that. And we unfortunately in the world of HIV services, some of the other folks who were trying to be on the show today have messaged me this morning, and because of the nature of any kind of social services, they're not able to be with us. They may try to log in a little bit later on and share with us toward the end of the program. But we are going to we're going to go ahead and move forward. We're going to do what we do on each one of these shows, and invite every single one of you that are watching to jump in, ask us any questions. You can type those in the text message area. Share this with folks, because this is a day that's designed to remember, to honor, and to serve. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. So let me just double check and see how our special guest is doing, getting in. Okay. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and give her just a few more minutes. And while we're doing that, I want to explain to you guys just a little bit about why I felt it was important to do a show like this. There were 36.9 million people globally who were living with HIV and AIDS by the end of 2014. A lot of us have the idea that the AIDS epidemic has already reached its peak and it's done. Because of the great medications that are available, that those risks and dangers and sad stories that we've heard through much of the 80s and 90s are a thing of the past. But there are 1.9 million people who became newly infected with HIV this year alone. 1.2 million people died from AIDS-related illnesses in 2015, and new infections, while they've dropped by 35% since 2000, the number of AIDS-related deaths dropped by 42% since 2004. The thing we have to remember is that with access to medication, only 41% of adults and 32% of children have access to medication across the world. So we still have a long road ahead of us to ensure that equal access, prevention, and compassionate care are something that everyone can count on. And so the work ahead of us is still great, and we've got we've got so many people that need to be cared for. Another reason that I'm doing this show, as many of you already know, is that in 1983 I was a young monastic, a young monk, walking home from the work that I did at night to moonlighting to support our monastery. And I was unfortunately raped and beaten by 4 Haitian immigrants who were at the time themselves being extremely oppressed, beaten down, physically abused by the law enforcement in South Florida, in Hollywood, Florida. And as a result of that, later that year, in November of that year, I was in the hospital with pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. I was diagnosed with what was called GRID, back then in 1983. The doctors told me that I would be dead within 18 to 24 months, and that if I survived that bout of pneumonia at all, so that I should get my affairs in order. Well, I'm happy to say that it's been over 30 years, and I'm still here. Heaven doesn't want me; hell's afraid I'll take over. But I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here and to have had a remarkable teacher who profoundly impacted my life. Early on in my life, I had the good fortune of working with several other teachers who helped me to understand sort of the new thought process, sort of the understanding how to get your life in order. Let's see. Hang on one second. So this is life as we know it. Namaste. Do you have Chrome browser on your computer at all?
No.
Okay, because sometimes that'll work better. But if it won't accept your browser, that's not a problem. For folks who are listening in, I'm hoping. Actually, Nadia, I see that you're in the room. If you could let me know when Swami Anjani begins to speak, we'll do a test right now. If you can hear her, then just let me know by shooting me a message in the text area. Swamiji, go ahead and say something to everybody.
Namaste, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I've been trying to get on, but there's something weird with the browser.
Okay, are you able to hear her, Nadia? We're gonna wait for her. Yes, she can hear you. Wonderful. Thank you, Nadia, so much. Well, folks, technology being what it is, and this platform that we're using, this video platform, is actually only 210 days old today. So they've still got, they're still in beta, and they still have some things to work out. But I'm really privileged today to have somebody that I consider to be a dear friend, a spiritual sister, and truly one of the heroes that serve our community, to share with us the stories of a person that I believe is probably one of the greatest heroes will be recognized as one of the greatest heroes of the 20th and 21st century in terms of AIDS care. And we're going to talk a little bit about why today. I again want to introduce Swami Anjani Jaya Hanuman, who is a Swami, a monk at Kashi Ashram, and works with the Kashi Foundation in Florida. I'm going to let Swami Anjani tell you a little bit about their story, and I want to remind you guys that if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the text area next to the show, so that I can pass those on, and actually Swamiji can probably actually see those on the side panel as well. And we'll do our best to answer your questions. And if you happen to be living with HIV, or you work as a caregiver, or are involved in HIV/AIDS services, and you'd like to join the discussion, please feel free to jump in the open seats. We'll have 3 open seats during this session, so we'd love to hear from you as well. Swami Anjani, thank you so much for being here. Namaste, and would you please just share a little bit about your story and tell us about Kashi Ashram?
Okay, Namaste, Gurudas. Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to be able to share Kashi's story and Ma's story, especially referencing HIV and AIDS. But just briefly about me, I guess. I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer from the Philippines. When I got out of college, I went there and I did a lot of traveling. I worked in a leper colony in Cebu when I was there as well, and did a lot of traveling, and found that I wanted to find a relationship with God, because I didn't quite understand what was happening in the world. So it was a few years after I got back here to America that I met Mom in 1975, and the minute she spoke about loving and serving others and sharing truth and sharing love and kindness, it was like I felt like I was home. You need someone that you know is going to help you change your life from inside yourself. because of their inspiration, and that's really what Ma did for me. And in 1976, we founded Kashi, which is down here in Sebastian, Florida. So we have a bunch of transplanted New Yorkers and Californians and people from all over who are here and have been here for nearly 40 years. It's just an amazing place. Gurudas, as you well know, you've been here so many times. You're our spiritual brother. You're definitely in our heart always. But if you go to Kashi.org, I can't imagine what I could tell you more than what you will see in our beautiful website. So just visit Kashi.org and you can get a nice virtual tour of this beautiful interfaith ashram that was founded with the tenets, basic tenets that are shared by all paths of love, kindness, service, and devotion to that inner life that we all share, that divinity that we all share.
I'm putting the
right?
I just put the URL up there in the text area for folks, and I really encourage you to go and take a look. And I can't say enough about the work that Kashi does, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want to share a little bit about somebody that holds a special place in all of our hearts, and Swami Anjani's heart, and everybody at Kashi as well as mine. And that's our root teacher. And when you hear us talk about Ma, and we're talking about Ma Jaya Sati Bhagavati, who left her body, shed the mortal coil a couple years back, but whose work lives on and in a powerful way. And so let's start out to help everybody to understand a little bit about Ma's story, but equally, I think important, understanding the timing in which Ma's story sort of began to unfold, and how that led to the tremendous work that she's done in the LGBTQ LMNOP community, as well as the I hope I didn't leave any initials out, but you guys, you're in my heart, and within the HIV and AIDS community, especially today, my heart just remains heavy over the story of Hanuman Freeman, and that connection to what we're talking about today. So, Swamiji, if you would share a little bit about Ma's story and how that led to the work that Kashi does with hospices and the River Fund and the county homes and all that.
Sure, happy to do that. Ma was born in 1940. She was in a Jewish family, an impoverished Jewish family in Brooklyn. And she was formed in those early years. I remember her talking so many times about how she would go over to Coney Island, which is where she lived right across the street from there. She would go over, and under the boardwalk, she would be befriended by 4 African American people. You got to remember, she was probably 7, 8, 9 years old, so late 40s. She was befriended by these people, and they taught her about kindness and compassion just by the way that they related with her. This young child was sort of put in their midst to learn. And Ma, she said she always felt that God was with her. She always felt that God was. She looked at the ocean and she would say, there's God. God's everywhere. But these folks kind of imbued those teachings in her of there are no throwaway people, which is one of my favorite phrases that Ma always used to say. There are no throwaway people. And then as she grew up, she was totally doing service so much of the time herself, and she was married with 3 kids, and she had a vision of the Christ who came to her. And of course, Ma, with her wonderful book with sense of humor, said, "You've got the wrong house, I'm Jewish." And she can only imagine the look he must have had on his face. It's like, really? But he taught her about teaching always. He said to her, "You must teach always, for always are mine." And imagine you had this young Brooklyn Jewish housewife who married a young Italian Catholic, and they had kids, and she was just the most loving and amazing person. So having had that exhortation from the Master himself, that's kind of how things started to unfold for her. And she always felt that those teachings of kindness and compassion toward all, without hatred, was critical. And then her own guru, Neem Karoli Baba from India, who had left his body several years ago, about a year before she met him. He came to her as well, and since then she just started teaching. And people, it's funny how things in the universe, how that synergy is, and how we're all drawn to something because it's our root, it's our generic self, it's in the universe, and it pulls us somewhere. And people just started showing up. It's not like they put ads in the paper, come and hear Ma talk. It was never anything like that. It just happened. And then Kashi was founded in 1976, and in the early 80s, we had a young man named Morgan McDonald who came here. He said, I don't know what's wrong with me. He was very ill. He had a rash all over his body. He was extremely ill. And he came here for help, referred by somebody from California. And so we didn't know how to relate to whatever it was. And Mom said, don't worry, we'll get you to the hospital. We'll take care of you. So he was brought up to the hospital. And then when we went to find out about him the next day, we were told that he was no longer there. And found out that the state had actually found a way to ship him back on a plane, got him out of the state, because as it turned out, he had what they were then calling grid. And I was devastated by that, but how dare you remove this young man out of your own fear and prejudice? How dare that happen? And that was kind of the torch that she picked up at that point, and sort of made it her mission without saying so, that we as a community, and we stood behind her 100%, as a community, we were going to do everything we could to
Oh, I think I might have lost you.
Are you there?
Yeah, I think I lost you for a second.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of how it started, and Ma was, Paul Monette wrote about her in his book, The Last Watch of the Night. He said, Ma is our warrior angel. We went down to more places. I mean, it was weekly visits to the county home in Palm Beach and bringing food to everyone there. But Ma always just set the example. Everyone was afraid of HIV, and you had to wear gloves and this and that. She to be in the room with people, they were afraid of AIDS. I would jump in a bed and hug these guys and these women and just say, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's all about love. And there's a ton of stories. And I can ramble. You can tell me to stop anytime if you want to ask a different question.
Oh, sure. We keep this conversational on this show, and so I absolutely I could listen all day long, and we could share stories all day long. I just wanted to speak to that. That when a lot of folks who are watching the program today, maybe we've got a younger audience, and so for you, you kind of came of age and grew up in an era, fortunately, when the level of discrimination was a little bit lower than back then. I remember my first hospitalization with PCP was in November of 1983, as I said in the beginning of the show, and as a young monastic, I expected my brother monks to show up at the hospital and expected them to I was in for 31 days. Nobody came to see me, and I thought, well, maybe they're busy or they don't know how to get to Jackson Memorial Hospital or whatever. And when I came home, I found out that and I've never gotten the full story, but the landlady told them that I was not welcome to come back. And they packed up everything out of fear because back then GRID was not, as it was known, gay-related immune deficiency, wasn't unknown, and very few people got out of the hospital at all. So my entire monastic community up and left, and I didn't find them for a good 5 years to see where they had moved in Miami. We were living in Fort Lauderdale at the time. And they moved to Miami and, cut off all communication with me, asked me to leave the order because they were afraid that I was going to infect them as well and the people that we cared for. And so this is the era that Ma began to reach out. This is the era that Ma said, there are no throwaway people, and began to serve. And one of the stories I would love for you to tell was a little bit later when, related to the kids and the school system. I mean, it's, Florida at the time, especially in that region in Florida, we were outside of the Borscht Belt, outside of Miami, and sort of the more progressive folks in South Florida. And tell us a little bit about what happened with the kids, and I would love for you to share the story about waking up one night and Ma telling them they had the wrong symbol burning on the grounds.
They had the what?
When they were burning a cross.
Oh yeah, burning a cross. Yeah. Oh God. The kids. Ma founded the school because of human rights. Just briefly to tell you, which was a river school. It lasted for 25 years. It was a really good private school that we had here, but it was so down to earth, and 75% of our enrollment was kids from the local community. So we had the school, and Ma would constantly have us as teachers, okay, we're going to have to educate these kids nowadays. So of course we did. It was part of the curriculum. We told everybody about everything. And the River House had been established across the street, which was a respite for folks who kind of needed a place to be as they fought the disease, as they for caregiving and just for residents, people to live there. It was a wonderful place, and we constantly brought the kids over to visit. This, of course, was with their parents' permission. You got to understand, this is mostly local folks. Sebastian, at the time, was a very rural place, and somebody did come and burn a cross on our lawn. It was the KKK, a very unusual thing. They didn't believe that we should be working with AIDS, and they wanted us out of there. And so, and then someone would pass at the River House, and the kids would be invited over to say goodbye, and it was all really wonderful education that the students who grew up here still treasure. They have lost their fear, so much of their fear, not only of illness, but of death. And that's kind of an incredible gift you can give a child, and Mom felt that was really important, as did we all. And then came the day, there was one day when a local family had a young child. She was probably 9 or 10, and she was HIV positive, and they wanted her to be in school here because she had been in public school and was harassed. If you can imagine harassing a young girl like that, I mean, it just can make you cry. And so, of course, we were like, obviously, she can come here. And Mom came out to Darshan one night, which is when we would gather with her to meditate, to sit with her, do teachings and stuff. And she said, okay, I want to know who's standing with me. Who's standing with me as we continue to work with HIV/AIDS? Who's standing with me to let Gabriella become a student in our school? Who's going to stand with me? Of course, the entire room stood up and applauded, like, absolutely, we're here. We want to be part of this change in society, to not tolerating, but really accepting and honoring this person as a human being with dignity. And that's what happened with all of that. So the kids were very much involved with it. And then, of course, one day you mentioned Donovan Freeman. He was a young boy who was born of a mother who was in prison, and she was HIV positive, and so was he. And he had a conversion around age, I don't remember, it was 18 months, Gurudas, do you remember? He wasn't even 2, I don't think, when he was seroconverted and had no HIV in him anymore. Unfortunately, down the line, he wound up with lupus. And he's another one of those victims of the prison system. He was allowed to, he wound up in prison. He wound up in the back of a van, untreated for his lupus, and literally died in the back of a prison van transport. And there's just so many edges to that story that are painful and awful. And he was one of us,
Yeah.
Very, very sad situation for that young man who had a heart of gold.
Yeah, he did.
He faced some challenges in school because, he was born with some disabilities because mother was, she was addicted to crack, so he had a lot of challenges, and he came through so many of them. Made a couple of difficult choices and wound up in prison, but he was only 21. It was just the saddest thing ever. It was unnecessary. It was criminal that happened to him.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about his story on one of our future shows. But I thought it was important to mention, not just to honor him and the part that he's played in the unfolding of the Kashi story and of Ma's work, but to just keep the story out there, because people need to know that we don't live in a safe society anymore, and we don't live in a just society anymore, and that was what Ma was all about. I mean, when we started this show, I shared with everybody that yes, it's true that new infections have fallen by 35% since 2000, and the number of AIDS-related deaths might have dropped by 42% since 2004. But still, to this day, there are only 41% of adults are, and I'm not great at math, so call it roughly 60%. 59% of adults do not have access to medical care. A staggering 32% of all children only have access to medical care. I mean, we're talking about almost 70% of the kids who are living with HIV and AIDS around the world do not have access to these life-saving meds. So the discrimination continues, the inequity continues, and we have to reach a point in the wake of all of this. I think all of this violence and all of this intolerance and all of this phobia that's going on, homophobia, transphobia, HIV and AIDS phobia. And I'll share a story to illustrate that in a moment. Ma was instrumental in my life in helping me to work through. But this is why the work that Ma did has in my opinion, become one of the most important works in our movement in the 20th and 21st century. We had hoped to have another friend of ours on. Cleve Jones was going to be with us today, but again, because of all of the everything that's going on World AIDS Day, those who are on the front lines, fighting the good fight, often can't get here. Another friend of mine, Lewis Farmer, from New York City, was going to be here, and he's actually in the field today. But when back in 2005, so we're not talking about a long time ago, 10 years ago, my partner at the time was in the hospital, and he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, was living with AIDS for 15 years, and went through chemotherapy, and he became very weak, and he was very frail. And while he was in the hospital in Orlando, Florida, at Florida Hospital, a nurse that wasn't part of that particular floor, so she wasn't used to dealing with oncology and AIDS patients. She was a rotator. Came onto the floor. Would erase my name as the spouse on the whiteboard every night when she came in, and she was clearly AIDS phobic. So after this surgery, minor surgery that he had to remove an adhesion around his intestines, he had an accident and shit the bed. And his and his nurse came in. He rang the nurse buzzer. This was around 4:00 in the morning, and she came in and she tossed. Now he weighed all of about 89 pounds at that time, and she tossed a washcloth and a bar of soap onto the bed. Did not come in the room and said, "You made the mess. You clean it up." And not even any water. She expected him to use his ice water from the bed. And this is a man who he had the accident because he couldn't get out of bed to get to the little porta potty thing that they put next to the bed. And so he sat there from 4:00 in the morning until 7:00 in the morning, when I was a chaplain at that hospital and was getting ready to go on rounds. And he called me crying and said, "I had an accident last night, and the nurse wouldn't clean me up, and she just threw the washcloth and rag, and I couldn't reach it, and I couldn't do anything." So he'd been sitting there in his feces for a couple hours. And long story short, by the end of that day, he had a decubitus wound, a bed sore, severe bed sore on his tailbone that ate a hole straight through to his tailbone, and was dead 2 weeks later. And so if you're watching this and you think that homophobia and AIDS phobia doesn't exist, folks, we still have a long way to go. That was just 10 years ago, and that nurse did not lose her job. She did not even get suspended from her job. So the work that Ma has done, is Swami Anjani, if you could talk a little bit about, not just, when we understand in the era of AIDS, it's not just folks who end up fortunate to be in the respite at Kashi, and not just folks who are fortunate to end up in hospital care or hospice care. But one of the other things that Kashi does, and that Ma was instrumental in starting, and now it exists around the country, is the Feed Everyone program, and Under the Bridges and on the Streets. Could you talk a little bit about that project as well? Because that's feeding a lot of junkies, a lot of homeless, a lot of people with AIDS.
That's correct, and that happens in there's 4 Kashi affiliates. Of course, the mother ashram is here, Kashi Ashram in Sebastian, and in LA it is called Under the Bridges and on the Streets with Swami Lakshmi Das and his crew, and then there's Swami Durgadas and his crew in New York, the Feed Everyone program, which has received a lot of recognition in New York City, and in Atlanta, Swami Jai Devi and a lot of group people there in that ashram. They do prison yoga, and they do a lot of street, what they call street meals, which is feed people and bring presents to people. So I started that because there were so many people, even 10, 12 miles from us, that really they don't know where their food is coming from. You have homeless people, and then you have people who, what do they call, food insecure. They may have a roof over their head, but maybe all the money they ever get is going for medical bills, or maybe to keep the electricity on or not, but they don't know where their next meal is coming from. So there's homeless folks and there's food insecure folks. And River Fund here in Sebastian, we try very hard to address that issue. Every other Saturday we go down and bring tons of food and presents. The biggest thing that's coming up is going to be on the 12th of December. That's the annual Christmas Feed Everyone event, and that's down at this little church in Gifford, which has withstood hurricanes, and you can't even believe this building. That is, you'll have everything collapsing around it. This thing has been there forever. And hundreds of people come. Jaya Canterbury Council, the director of the River Fund, and she is spearheading this effort with all her volunteers, and they put out on the line, we need turkeys. So everybody went out and bought so many turkeys that they've got enough turkeys to give to every family down there for Christmas, as well as presents and all kinds of things that people need. So there's homeless people and food insecure people. Many of them, of course, are HIV positive, or they have drug addictions and such, because of the life is just very difficult when you're in that position. So Mom started that program years ago, and it continues in 4 specific locations around the country.
Well, and one of the other things, Ma served for many, many years as a trustee on the Parliament of World Religions, and her work there brought her around the world. And speaking of the River Fund, and folks, if you want to learn more about the River Fund, that's riverfund.org. You can go there and find out more information. And of course, if you want to find out more about Ma's teaching, go to kashi.org, Kashi. It's over here or here. I don't know where it shows up on your browsers, in the text area. But one part of Ma's work also brought her to do some tremendous work in one of the areas that remains the most torn by the decimation of the AIDS pandemic, and that's in Africa. Could you speak a little bit about Ma's work there?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things happening over there in Uganda, and there's Ma's Orphan Center, which is an orphanage that grew from 60 children to probably about 1,500 or more, and they have been orphaned by HIV/AIDS. That is one project. The other thing that happens is that Jaya and a handful of others go over to Uganda periodically, and they have a program which helps empower women, especially women who have been affected by the wars and, of course, by HIV/AIDS. They've lost their husbands. Some of them are HIV positive themselves, and they've been doing things like teaching them, raising certain crops, having goats, providing milk. There's a lot of different things, and there's an AIDS education program. And it's gotten to a point where it's not the River Fund doing it, but these women now taking it on and doing it themselves. So, that whole saying about teaching, providing fish or teaching the villager to fish kind of thing. And they have been carrying on the AIDS education work about infection, about contracting it, all the different things, all the different aspects of living living with AIDS and trying to take care of your family and trying to grow crops and trying to survive. So that work continues. Gurudas, you mentioned the Parliament. Can I tell a story about how the Parliament got involved with AIDS?
Absolutely.
This will give you a real idea of who Ma is. So the Parliament of the World's Religions took place in 1993 in Chicago. This was the first time in 100 years that they had had it. And so Ma attended with a few of her students, Chaylas, and Ma, being interfaith, claims every religion for her as her own. So, of course, they're in the meetings, and they would say, would all the Jews please stand up? And Ma would stand up. Would all the Catholics please stand up? Ma would stand up. Would all the Muslims please stand up? And on, right? Would all the Hindus please stand up? So this went on. And so she was already drawing attention because of her interfaith beliefs and her insistence upon the united message of all paths. So they looked at the call to global action, which was the issues that they felt, the global issues that they felt this Parliament needed to address, right? This is 1993. Guess what wasn't on the thing? HIV/AIDS. She had a fit and did not stop. When Ma passed away, we got a letter from Dirk Ficke, who was the executive director of the Parliament up until a few years ago. And he wrote a testimonial, and he said, anyone who can stand in front of the august body of the Parliament trustees and say that she's going to break their balls if they don't include AIDS has my undying respect. And that's exactly what she did. The Brooklyn came out. She said, you've got to include this. How can you not include this? And support came from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, who stood up and said, Ma is right. We must address this issue. And that's how the Parliament came to address AIDS. This one woman, brilliant light of divinity, stood up there and said, we have got to address HIV/AIDS. And that's how the Parliament started doing it.
And she not only did that with the Parliament of World Religions, but she did that with another religious leader when she met him around that same era as well, didn't she?
Oh yeah.
With the Pope.
She did a lot of people. And the Pope, she went, but it was 94, I think it was the following year. I'm trying to remember when Ma went over to it was somewhere around there, because she had been asked by the Pierre Cardin's Foundation to contribute one of her paintings for pediatric AIDS. And this happened in France, so we sent a painting over, and apparently they raised $20,000 from that one painting. I was a brilliant artist as well. So that was wonderful. So she happened to be there, and she had gotten an audience with the Pope, and we had pictures of her. She brought a portfolio with her of kids, from the ages of 3 to probably 14, photographs of these kids who had passed away from HIV/AIDS. And Ma showed this to His Holiness. I call him His Holiness the Pope because out of respect for those who view him as that. And she showed the Pope, and he was, this was 94, 93, and she showed him the picture. She said, you've got to, get this condom thing under control. You've got to help. You've got to do something. And, they had a dialogue. I don't know that much was able to change, but at least, who knows? I believe change can occur very slowly, ripple upon ripple in the stream. So.
Yeah, I remember that same year she inspired me. I was asked to speak at a conference in Orlando in front of the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops, and my my background being a Franciscan contemplative as well as Buddhist contemplative. They asked me to talk about the work that we were doing with AIDS, and of course I told Ma that I was going to talk about the work that Kashi was doing, and my response to them was to accept and stand at the front of the room and start my speech by saying the body of Christ has AIDS. And I repeated that several times throughout the conference, and the message made some of those bishops so uncomfortable that they left the room. Rather than deal with the reality, they just left the room. But as you said, it's a ripple effect, and several years thereafter, we started to see some sweeping changes in terms of at least outreach, not tolerance, not acceptance, not understanding, but outreach to recognize that truly the body of Christ has AIDS. And so when if one person goes without care, then it's not acceptable. And we have a responsibility. We've reached, we're 3 minutes away from the cutoff point on our show today. I appreciate the folks at Blab giving us this platform. I certainly appreciate having you on the show. Technical issues and all, where there's a will, there is a way. Hopefully one of these days, I got a message back while we were talking telling me that this platform right now only works with the Chrome browser, which is what I had suspected that might have been the case. Now I can tell people that, ahead of time. But Swami Anjani, just hearing your voice, missing you guys so much, and of course missing Ma with every fiber of my being every day. It just brought her back for me in a special way on this important day of remembrance, this day of honoring our survivors, honoring those that we've lost, and honoring our heroes. I recognize that this show will be seen by a couple thousand people over the course of the day on the rebroadcast. So I just want to thank you for the hearts and lives that I know you've touched, and that hopefully we continue to keep Ma's legacy alive in the work that we do. And those of you that are watching, you can keep this work alive as well by spending time today, reaching out to somebody who who might be living with HIV or AIDS, or who may be a caregiver or may have lost somebody. Show compassion to one another. And as we remind folks in every show, stay in the moment, because that's where the power is. Be grateful for everything you've got, because if you can't be grateful for what you have, what makes you think you're going to be any happier with more? Serve one another. Remember, there are no throwaway people. And always remember that the best is yet to come. Namaste, my friends. Hold on, Swami Anjani.
Thank you for your work. Thank you.